Hi, it's Penny here, and today I wanted to do two things. So firstly, I wanted to go through with you all the books that I bought or obtained throughout the year, which is about 45 books. But I also wanted to go through all the books that I have on my TBR shelves to read this year. And as it turns out, there is a lot of overlap there, so I thought we would try and do both of them at the same time. So I thought the way we would approach this is we will split this into standalone books in series, and also we'll look at how many books I started with at the start of last year, how many books I obtained, how many I read, and then finally what we've got left to read this year. So let's start with the standalones. One of my goals for last year was TBR 0, and I started out in a very good position. Let me grab the stack. So this pile here was the 6 standalone books that I had. My kind of plan for TBR 0 is just to have all the standalones down, and Series 0 I'm treating as a whole different goal. So like, I was in a good position to get to TBR 0. How did I do? Well, these 3 books that my mum and my sister gifted me for a video concept, I still haven't filmed that video, so I still haven't read those books. This book here is a short story collection. I read the first one. I actually really liked it. I didn't have the brain power to continue, so I still need to read that as well. But these top 2, I did read. So that means just 4 books on the TBR, right? No, of course not, because of course I bought some books. But actually, let's start with this stack of books. So these books here are the ones that I bought, but I had already read them when I bought them, so it's not so bad. Firstly, I've got Recursion by Blake Crouch. I bought this because it goes with my edition of Dark Matter. Blake Crouch writes like time travel, multiverse, twisty books, or at least that's what Dark Matter and Recursion are. His other book, Upgrade, I read this year and I hated it, but it wasn't a time travel book, so that's a clue for me that I'll only read his time travel-y multiverse type books in the future. I hope he doesn't let me down with those. Anyway, Recursion is about these people who start having this false memory syndrome where suddenly they remember a whole life that never happened. Some people are very upset about this because it involves them having had children or partners that they no longer have. And we're also following a woman who is researching like Alzheimer or like memory diseases and a potential cure for that. It had some pacing problems, but I really loved it, so I'm glad to have that. Then I also bought Amatka. This is one of the very few books that I bought new because I loved Amatka. It's in this world where things have to be regularly named or otherwise they lose their shape and turn into like this grey mush. And we're following this hygiene product researcher as she goes to another colony to try and learn about their hygiene needs there. And while she's there, she's really struggling because she's gone through a bunch of trauma, but as well, she starts uncovering a bunch of secrets about this world. Very surreal, and also I found it very emotional. And I'm super excited to reread this at some point. Then my sister actually gifted me Uzumaki by Junji Ito. This is about a small town that starts being overrun by spirals. It just keeps building on itself until it becomes absolutely horrific. I really love this. Then I bought Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I mainly bought this because I wanted it to go with The Martian by Andy Weir, which I really enjoyed. And I didn't think that I liked this one as much, but actually, the more it sits with me, the more I still think about this. We're following this man who wakes up in space with no memory of why he's there or what's going on. And we're kind of following along with him as he figures things out. There is a friendship in this that is absolutely beautiful. And I think that character is the one that I keep thinking about. And then finally, my local department store had this one on special, so I picked it up. It is Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant, which is a pen name for Shauna Maguire, and this is her mermaid horror story. So basically, this ship had gone out to try and discover mermaids and never come back. This follows the next ship, which includes some of their relatives and some other scientific researchers trying to go and figure out what happened, because there is footage from the first ship that shows them being attacked by mermaids, but no one really believes it's true. As you might guess, it was true. I really enjoyed this. Those are all the standalones that I bought that I'd already read. Don't affect the TBR, thank goodness. Also, all books that I'm super excited to own, and I didn't spend that much because a lot of those I got either as gifts or secondhand. So now we'll get into the books that I bought that do affect the TBR. So firstly, the only ones I bought new are these 2 Maori mythology. I think they're like middle grade, maybe YA type books. I bought them when they're on special at Huia Publishers. I really like reading books with Maori mythology in them, and both of these looked good. I don't know what they're about. This one's on my February TBR, something about a taniwha, and this one is about a demigod, probably a little bit like Maui, but I guess I'll read it and then we'll see. So there's those two. Then there's this one which I got from a local thrift shop for a couple of dollars. It's another Maori author. I don't know what this is about. Something about an Irish girl coming to stay on holiday in New Zealand. Something about a threat facing the town and the birds of the forest, and this girl working with some old Maori woman to help out. I don't know. I actually did have this on my TBR a couple of times last year and I didn't get to it, but I do want to read this. Witi Himaira is the author of Whale Rider, which there's a very popular New Zealand film adaptation of, and I did quite enjoy Whale Rider. So I'm looking forward to reading this one as well. So that's just 3 more books added to the TBR. Not too bad, right? But always, every year, my downfall is this annual book fair that happens. The books are very cheap. All the money goes to charity. It didn't actually happen last year because of COVID, but this year, no, 2022, it did happen. And I was very stressed at work, and so I didn't restrain myself. And that meant I bought all these books. But they're all books I'm excited about, so is it really a bad thing? Probably not. So let's go through them. So firstly, we've got 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This is a magical realism book that a lot of people say is like one of the first magical realism books, or like a really good example of it. I don't really remember. It's like a classic, as you can see by the ugly orange penguin cover. I don't like these covers, but I did want to read this and I saw it, so I got it. I don't really actually know, other than that it's magical realism. I've forgotten what it's really about. I think it's a little bit surrealist, so it's not entirely clear what it's about. I don't know. I'll read it and we'll see. Then we've got In My Father's Den by Maurice G. This is a New Zealand author, and it was adapted into a movie, I think. I think it's about some kind of murder investigation. I don't know. I'll probably read it and watch the adaptation. It should be fairly short and quick to read, hopefully. What's that font like? Oof, awful. Okay, then I've got A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. Did put this on my TBR briefly last year. Didn't get to it. This is about a boy who every night talks to this monster. It's a bit of a metaphor, I think. Was it made into a movie? I think it was made into a movie. So another one that I can read the book and watch the movie of. Then I've got The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. I probably said that wrong. This is one about a boy who has a book and discovers that all the other copies of the book are being destroyed or something. And once he starts investigating it, there's a bunch more going on. Honestly, I don't really know, but I know a lot of people really love this. Saw it at the book fair. It was cheap. I got it. Then we've got The Dry by Jane Harper. This is another one that I think's been adapted into a TV show. I think it's an Australian thriller out in the outback, maybe. Some kind of murder. I don't know, but I've heard good things about it, so I got it. Actually, this was one where there was quite a lot of copies at the book fair, and I got the nicest one because of course I did. Then I got, this one actually wasn't from the book fair. This is Unwind by Neil Shusterman. I got this from a little library. It's about a world where when people are 16 or up until they're 16, their parents can choose to unwind them and use their genetic material to make a new kid. And I think we're following 3 teens whose parents are going to unwind them. I've heard mixed things about it. It is also the beginning of a series. Why is it in this pile, Penny? I'm not meant to be starting new series. You know what? This goes into a different pile. That's going to ruin all my numbers I already wrote down. Anyway, then I got The Immortalist by Chloe Benjamin. This is about a family who go to like a fortune teller and hear about their future and then just kind of how that plays out. And I think it's kind of questioning, did these things happen because that's what was foretold, or was it always going to happen? I don't know. I've heard mixed things about it because almost every book, if you listen to enough people's opinions, there are mixed things about it. And this is an older book, but initially I heard a lot of good things about it. And it's a pretty cover, so I got it. Then, this one you won't have heard of. I got The Time Lizard's Archaeologist by Tricia Hannifin. This is a New Zealand book. Some kind of time travel set in Auckland, like a psychologist in Auckland, and also like a future ecological crisis. Something about bees, honestly. I love lizards, I love time travel, I love books written by New Zealanders set in my hometown. I'm excited. Then I got The Push, another one I've heard mixed things about, but initially it was all positive. This one is by Ashley Audrain. It's something about a woman who has a child and doesn't connect with her, and it's kind of questioning, is there actually something wrong with this child, or is it something wrong with her? Something along those lines. We'll see. Then lastly, I got Life After Life by Kate Atkinson. To be honest, this is a different cover than the one I've always seen, so I was very proud of myself for recognizing it at the book fair. It is about a girl who lives her life over and over again, or something. I always love that concept, so I'm looking forward to reading it. And I have heard a few good things about it, but not many. Not many. So that's 12 books added to the TBR, the initial 4. So that means we'll have 16 standalone books to read in the next year. I normally try to pick 3 books off my TBR every month, but they're not always the standalones. Still, I think it's doable. I think it's doable. And before we move on to series, I do have some other books that I want to talk about. So these are ones that I did buy during the year, but I've already read them, so they're not on the TBR. But what we do need to decide is, are we going to keep them or are we going to get rid of them? Firstly, I've got a couple of picture books that my sister got me. A Mouse's Tale by Wayne Anderson. Kind of a dark, creepy story about this mouse going to the moon. Loved it. Definitely going to keep it. Also Strange Planet by Nathan Pyle. This is the one very popular on Instagram for a while, where the aliens are like on Earth and explaining normal human things in a humorous way. Lots of fun. We'll keep that one. Then I've got The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Honestly, this is so hyped. A retelling of the story of Achilles from Patroclus's view mainly. I absolutely hated it. And the more time that goes by, the more I hate it. So even though part of me wants to keep this just because it's Greek mythology and I supposedly like Greek mythology, I didn't like this, so I think we're going to get rid of it. Do I need a separate pile for getting rid of things? Yes. We'll chuck them over there. Then I've got After Dark by Haruki Murakami. This is a strange one. Kind of just about this girl and her sister. Do I remember exactly what happened in this? It's Haruki Murakami, so it's really strange. There's parts in it that I really didn't like, but also parts that I really loved. So Haruki Murakami, I think I've decided I'm never going to read anything else by him. However, I did kind of like this one, so I do think I'm going to keep it. If anything, just because it was a very creative book. And I could see myself recommending it to other people, and I could see myself rereading it. That's the main criteria for me keeping a book. Then we've got You by Caroline Kepnes. This is borderline. I did like the way that it used second person, but overall the ending was very disappointing. And also, like, you could argue this is actually a series, but I won't be continuing, so I'm treating it as a standalone. And honestly, I don't think I'm going to keep it. Then I read Ariel by Sylvia Plath. This is just a book of poetry that I read as a high schooler. Loved it. Really enjoyed my reread. We'll keep that for sure for future wanderings around forests and reading poetry. Then I've got Percy Jackson and the Greek Gods. So this is just a bunch of Greek myths told from the perspective of Percy Jackson. It is aimed at a younger target audience. However, I had a lot of fun with it, and I think I would definitely lend this to younger people who wanted to learn about Greek mythology, or anyone who wanted to learn about Greek mythology. And I could also see myself rereading it, so I think we will keep that. I got this one for free from my local library. Then I've got The Liminal Zone by Junji Ito. This I bought to gift to someone, and then I was too slow. They bought it for themselves, so I got to keep it, and I am totally excited about that. It's just some creepy short story, horror, manga things in the style of Junji Ito, and I loved it. And I will definitely reread it. Then two more. Firstly, I've got Kuranga Tuku by Fiti Hiriaka. So this one is the story of Kuranga Tuku, who is the bird woman from the Maori myth, Hatupatu and the Bird Woman, where Hatupatu is like this little shit, gets himself in a bunch of trouble, and then ends up being kidnapped and on the run from the bird woman. This is, though, the bird woman's story. And it's written in a way where you can start from either side. So the beginning of this bit is up this way, and the beginning of this bit is up this way, and then in the middle it kind of crosses over with a retelling of the original myth. I did start with this side, which I loved. The beginning of this, amazing. This side, not as good, so I kind of wish I'd started with this side so I didn't get my expectations put so high by this side. But anyway, even though there were parts of this I didn't like very much, There were parts I really loved, and the overall concept is amazing, so I will definitely be keeping this one. And then lastly, we've got The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. This is another one. It's a Greek retelling of the Battle of Troy, supposedly from the woman's perspective, but honestly it just retold the same Achilles story that's in the Song of Achilles, and I was quite disappointed with it, partially because I'd just recently read the Song of Achilles, but either way, I don't think I'm going to keep this. Someone else will like it a lot more than me. I feel like this video is going to be really long. But anyway, that's all my standalone books. So I've still got a lot to read, but I don't feel like I'm doing too badly. And I think I've been aiming for TBR 0, but actually I think what I want is to always be reading books within a year of when I get them. And I think that's a better approach to things, because imagine not having any books on your shelf to read. That's not what I want. Okay, so now I want to talk about series. Series is a little bit more complicated though. I am aiming for series 0, but specifically I'm trying to get through all the series I have in progress. So actually on my shelf, I have this shelf up here, which is series I've already started or ones that I want to read. And then I have another shelf right down the bottom. These ones here are ones that I've bought, but I haven't started the series yet. Or there's some, like, I haven't got the first book in the series, so I can't read them. I kind of call them series blocked to myself, because I'm blocked from reading them, and I'm not committing to reading any of those this year. So I won't go into too much detail about them, but these are all the ones that I previously owned before the start of last year. And then these are all the ones that I bought during the year. Let's go through them quickly to justify why I bought them, even though I'm not planning to read them in the next year. Unwind, we already talked about. Whatever, I got it for free. Then I picked up this Nemesis Ship, I'm not sure how to say it, by Anne McCaffrey. This is actually in the world of the Crystal Singers, which I want to do a reread of at some point. I got this for free from a little library, so I thought, why not add it into the reread? But I'm not doing the reread yet, so I'm not going to read it yet. However, this is not a book you would often come across, so I had to get it while it was there. Then I got A Declaration of the Rights of Magicians by H.D. Parry. This is a New Zealand author. It was at the book fair. It was cheap. I wanted to read this. And because it's a New Zealand author, it's again not one you come across often. So I grabbed it while it was there. These next two I got from the book fair, and probably, maybe I shouldn't have. I got the first book and the third book, I think, from the Chaos Walking series. So The Knife of Never Letting Go is the first one, and then Monsters of Men is the second one. This is a series, I think, where all the women have disappeared and the men can all hear each other's thoughts. And as a result, it's written in a very creative way where you can hear all these different people's thoughts. And then I think a woman comes along and they can't hear her thoughts. It hasn't been a series I've heard anything about recently, but I did want to read it, so I got it. But I don't have the second book, so I kind of need that to appear from somewhere. Then I came across this Provenance arc by Anne Leckie. So this is an arc. Don't come across those often in New Zealand, but I think it's actually part of her Ancillary Justice series. I don't know much more about it, but I know it's a very popular sci-fi series that I wanted to read someday, so since this was free, I grabbed it. And then also, I think at the start of the year, I picked up The Bone Season from a thrift store. I would like to read this series at some point. I don't really know what it's about. Some girl who has psychic powers, but psychic powers are illegal and she gets caught. But then when she's taken away, it's something different from what you might expect. I was kind of hoping that some more books in the series would just magically find their way to me, but they have not yet. So I'm not going to start this yet because I don't want to start any new series, but I would like to read this. I've heard a lot of good things about it. So that's 13 books that I need to read, but I'm not committing to read them in 2023. But for the series that I do want to read in 2023, I had 22 at the start of the year. Then I read a bunch because I really was focusing on getting through series last year. So let's talk about the ones that I read and decide whether we're going to keep them or not. So first we've got the Skullduggery Pleasant series. I read not only these first 3, but I think the rest of the first series. There is another series I'm not going to continue because even though I really liked these first ones, I didn't like the later ones in the series. We're following this girl named Stephanie who gets involved in the paranormal world, and the skeleton detective Skullduggery Pleasant is her mentor, and there's a whole bunch of apocalyptic events happening as well as a prophecy. I just don't know whether I want to keep these or not. I got them because they had these sprayed edges, and like I did enjoy these first ones, but then I didn't really enjoy the rest of the series, and I don't have the rest of the series. So should I keep these or should I let someone else have them? I guess I should let someone else have them. Okay, then we've got Dragon's Fire by Anne McCaffrey and her son Todd McCaffrey. This is a book in the continuing series. I think it's called The New Adventures of Pern or something. Basically, where Todd McCaffrey came in and started taking over the writing. I don't really remember what happens in this one. Something to do with Firestone, which on Pern the dragons use to burn thread, which is this thing that falls from the sky sometimes and will destroy everything around it. This really gets into like the mining process of this Firestone. I do like some of the concepts of Anne McCaffrey's books, but I don't know that I like the writing style. So I think if I was going to collect Dragons of Pern books, I would collect the initial series and probably not keep this one. Then I read Ballad, which is the second book in the Fairies. What is the series called? I don't know the name of the series, but this is a Maggie Stiefvater series. The first one is Lament, the second one is Ballad. The third book will never be written, which is really sad because it's an amazing book about these teen musicians who get involved with the fairies. I struggled to get into the second book, but I ended up loving it even more than the first one. I will keep these first two books in the hope that one day Maggie Stiefvater will figure out how to finish this series. I know she said that it would be difficult for her to finish it now because her writing style has changed so much. In a lot of ways, these are like Twilight with fairies, but they're so much better than that. But like the writing style is so different from Maggie Stiefvater's writing style now, but I still do really enjoy this. Then we have The Broken Eye, the third book in the... Why do I not know any of these series names? The Lightbringer series. This is a 5-book series where people have these magical abilities based on light, so people will be able to draw magic from certain colors, and there's this one guy called the Black Prism who can use all the colors of light. There's a lot of like crazy stuff going on in this series. To be honest, some of it is not so great, like fat phobia, misogyny, like some weird stuff to do with slavery and sex, but also some parts of it are absolutely amazing. So I really love this series, but if you do want to go into it, be careful. But still, I'll be keeping this because I loved it. Then I read Succulents and Spells by Annie C. Buchanan. This is just like a really short, cozy fantasy about some witches in New Zealand. Well, a witch and a scientist learning about their abilities in Wellington. I really enjoyed this first book in the series. The rest of the ones did get a little bit boring for me, but you can read this as a standalone, so I'll probably just keep this one. It is a lovely, cute little book, and I'm always keen to support New Zealand authors. Then I've got Crown of Swords, Book 7 in the Wheel of Time series. I'm currently reading Book 8 of the Wheel of Time. I'm really struggling with it. Will I want to keep the series when I finish it? I don't know. I don't even have all the books. I have like one. I don't even know what books I have in this series. Like 1, 7, 8, 5. Anyway, I have a random collection of books from the series. I'll probably keep it at least till I finish the series, and then we will decide what we're doing with it. Then I've got Heir to Seven Waters by Juliette Marillier. This is the 4th book in the Seven Waters series. The 4th book was not my favorite. The first and second ones were. The third one I didn't like. The 4th one was okay. I don't own any of the other books in this series because I just got this from a thrift shop randomly, but I think I'll keep it because I would like to own the whole Seven Waters series, but not enough to buy it new, but enough to buy it at a thrift shop if fate would have it come to me. And then I have Child of Flame by Kate Elliott. This is the 4th book in a 7-book series, like an epic fantasy. There's a lot going on. I always find it really hard to describe it. People fighting over the throne, but also other people and races and species coming in and also fighting over things. A lot of dark magic and other worlds. I do enjoy this series, but I am struggling to get through it. I'm currently on book 5. This is book 4. But I do own the whole series and I do enjoy it. So I think I'll be keeping the whole series. But again, I'll probably decide properly when I get to the end of the series. Then I do have 4 books that I bought during the year, but I also read them. Firstly, I've got these 2 Whetū Toa books where we follow this girl named Whetū Toa whose mother goes to become a cleaner for this magician, and she ends up looking after all the magical farm creatures that this magician has, and also helping the magician out with some of his magic. I actually really love these. They're like super fun. I think Steph Mataku, like all of her books that I've read, I've had so much fun with. So these I will definitely be keeping. Then I got the 3rd book from the Lady Astronaut series, The Relentless Moon. This one, they're on the moon and there is some kind of sabotage conspiracy going on. I have the first 2 books in the series. I really enjoy it. I think there's a 4th book coming out soon. I should check when that is due out. Anyway, I love the series, so I'll be keeping it. And this one is actually a stand-in for the next book in the series, A Prayer for the Crown Shy, because I've lent that to my sister, but I bought that during the year new because I had the first book in hardback and I wanted the second one to match because these were some of my most favorite books of the year. We're following a tea monk who goes out into the world to try and figure out what they want to do with their life, and while they're out there they run into this robot. All the robots in this world have gone out into the wilderness and told the humans to leave them alone, but now this one robot has come back to see how the humans are going. Of course I'll be keeping this because it's my favorite. Okay, now we've only got the top shelf to go through, but I shouldn't have left them till last because now I'm too tired to get them down. There's a lot of heavy books up there. Okay, this first stack is ones that I already had on my TBR series that I can read. Kind of the top is the Wheel of Time, put a Dragons of Pern book in there, and then we've got at the bottom the continuation of the Crown of Stars series. I've talked about all those series so far already in this video, so I just need to read them at some point. Then this next pile, we have another couple of Dragons of Pern books. Maybe let me take them out of the pile. I also have these two books from the Jaren series by Kate Elliott. I know I can get this whole series in ebooks, and I have started it once before, but I started with the second book, which I have since found out is actually the third book, even though it says book 2 on it. The whole thing is very confusing, but I want to read this series at some point. I don't really know what it's about, even though I've already read this book. In this one, we had this girl whose dad was mad at her because he lived in the spaceship and she was like off gallivanting around with this nomadic tribe on this planet. It's been a long time since I read it, but I do want to reread this series, so it's been on my series list for a while and hopefully I'll get to it this year. And then we have these two, which are from the Wicked series by Gregory Maguire, the first book and the second book. I have read this series before again, but I wanted to reread it. My sister and I do have tickets to go and see Wicked, I think at the beginning of April. And I also had started reading the original Wizard of Oz series. So kind of in March, I'm going to start rereading both these series before going to that musical. So I have a plan for these ones. So I forget if I said, but those are the 22 series that I had at the start of 2022. Minus the 13 that I read would mean we had 9 left to read. Is that right? Let's just assume I did it right. But then I did, of course, buy some more that I need to read. There's 2 way up here. Firstly, I got from my sister The Girl Who Heard Dragons, which is another Dragons of Pern book that I would like to read at some point. And also, at the book fair, I picked up Into the Ashes by Lee Murray. This is the 3rd book in a series I have started. I have the 2nd and 3rd books on ebook, but when I saw the 3rd book, it's a New Zealand author, hard to find these books. I was amazed to find a printed edition of this, actually. It's about, like, monsters or taniwha or something out in the forests of New Zealand, like out in the wild bush. I really loved the first book, so I'm excited to continue the series. I'm seeing here they've really struggled with the font. Because Maori has sometimes like the letters with the little lines over the top. I forget what they're called. But this is not great on the back of the book. This would be a self-published book. It looks like it's better within the book. So that's good. Anyway, from the cover you wouldn't think I would like this because it's like military horror, monster, creature horror. But I like the first one, so I'm hopeful. Okay, so after those two, I think we've got 14 books that we need to read to catch up on all our series. I actually have a lot more. I'm going to do a whole nother video on all the series I want to continue that I don't own. But those are all the ones I need to read that I actually own. I should probably prioritize those. There is, however, still one more stack up here. These are the books from series that I bought throughout the year that I have already read. So I'll just go through them quickly. Firstly, I've got Track of the White Wolf by Jennifer Roberson. This is book 4 in the Chronicles of the Chaisuli. This is a series, like a fantasy romance that follows like different generations. It's been a long time since I read it. I think I read it in my like late teens, early 20s. I would love to reread it again because I know I loved it back then, even though I'm a little bit afraid that my tastes have changed a lot in the last 20 years. But again, not one you come across very often, so I picked it up. I really have low hopes of ever getting the rest of the books in that series. Then I picked up The Crystal Singer by Anne McCaffrey. I think I mentioned this before. It's about these people who, like a girl who failed music school, but she becomes a crystal singer, which is kind of like a miner of these magical crystals. It's been a long time since I read it, but I did really enjoy it. I'd love to reread it. I actually owned the whole series previously and got rid of it because I am an idiot. So don't get rid of books that you like. I've also got Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I'm counting this in series, even though in my head I would like to pretend that this is a standalone going forward. If you haven't heard about this book, it's about this cafe where if you sit in a particular seat, you're able to go back in time, but you can only stay back in time until the coffee gets cold. And as well, you can't leave your seat and you can't change anything in the past. But still, the author manages to write these amazingly emotional stories about how even though you can't change the past, you can still change the future. Beautiful. Just pretend the other books in the series don't exist. I also picked up Ready Player One, even though I have since read Ready Player Two, and I don't know if I like Ready Player One anymore. So I'd like to pretend Ready Player Two doesn't exist, even though it wasn't that terrible. Was it? I don't know. But like, it has made me question, did I like Ready Player One? I don't know, but I got this at some point before I read Ready Player 2, to be honest. I honestly have no memory of actually buying that. Maybe I got it from the book fair. I don't know. Then I got Until the End by Christopher Pike. So this is a trilogy he wrote. What are the books? The Party, The Dance, and The Graduation. I'm pretty sure I read these as a teen and I really like them. Just about these teens, this murder that happens and this murder investigation. I don't really remember, but I'd love to reread it at some point because Christopher Pike was one of my favorite authors. I have to admit, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of his stuff is very problematic rereading it now. But 20 years ago in my teens, I loved it. 20 plus years ago. My teens was a while ago. I know recently one of his books was adapted into the Midnight Club TV show, which people really liked. I think some people read the book and were like, what the fuck? So, not sure this will stand up, but I wanted to reread it, so I grabbed it. And then I also got The Republic of Thieves by Scott Lynch. This is the third book. I want to say it's the third book. Yeah, it's the third book. Is it the third book? I'm so confused. This is the third book in the... My brain is dead by the end of this video. This is the third book in the Gentleman Bastards series. I really like this edition, so I thought I'd pick it up. It doesn't match my edition of The Lies of Locke Lamora, the first book, and I don't have the second book. But sometimes you've just got to rely on thrift shop fate to bring you the books you need, you know? So we've got this one. It's a start. This series is about Locke Lamora and his band of thieves and all their cons and shenanigans. So, now these shelves are much messier than they were in the beginning, but I have at least taken you through all the books that I hold during the year and also all the books that are on my TBR, even if it was all kind of somewhat mixed up. To give you a summary, at the beginning of the year, 2022, I had 35 books on my TBR. Then I bought 45 books, or obtained them in some way, because some of them I didn't buy. Of those 45, 11 of them I had already read, and 25 of them I read during the year. So now I've ended up with 44 books on my TBR. But 13 of those I'm not committing to read yet, so we've kind of got 31 books on my TBR shelves that I want to read this year. I should easily be able to do that, but we will see how I manage. Because even though I was trying to get down my TBR and my series in the last year, I still somehow seem to have ended up with more books on my TBR rather than less. But never mind, this year I should have a lot more time for reading, so hopefully we'll do better this year than last year. Do let me know if you saw any books in here that you're particularly excited about, especially ones that are on my TBR. Let me know if you think I should prioritize reading them. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you. The recording stopped just as I said the last word. Did you get the last word? I don't know. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time.